The planet Veor was a realm of ancient beauty, surrounded by stars that sparkled like diamonds scattered across a dark velvet sky. It was a place of power, a place where the high courts held their rule, where every word was carefully measured, every gesture steeped in tradition. But beneath the beauty, there was an undercurrent of fear, an ancient curse that bound the royal family. The Viari people were ruled by the Princess Lysera, but none had ever seen her true face. The reason for this was a long-held legend that no one spoke about openly, yet it haunted the courts, the nobles, and the common folk alike. The Viari were a proud and noble species, their empire stretching across several star systems. But even the most powerful of their people could not escape the burden of this curse. The legend said that any person who looked upon the princess's face would be driven mad or be bound in a fate they could never escape. So from birth, Lysera wore a mask, a golden, intricate covering that hid her features from the world. It had become a symbol of her isolation, a constant reminder that she was not like others. Not a single suitor had ever dared to marry her, and no matter how many times the council tried to arrange alliances, each one had failed. The Veyar royal bloodline was a powerful force, a connection that bound the people together. But without a bond to a partner, the royal line was at risk of ending. For many years, the council had searched for a way to break the curse, to find a suitor who could look upon the princess's face without fear, someone who could stand by her side and carry on the legacy. But time was running out, and the princess's position as the heir was slipping further from reach. Lysera, the princess, sat alone in her chambers, looking out over the sprawling city beneath her. The buildings were tall and grand, their spires reaching for the sky. But despite the beauty of her surroundings, Lysera felt a deep emptiness in her chest. She had grown up with the knowledge that her face would never be seen, that her destiny was tied to the mask she wore. She had no real friends, no one to talk to who understood the weight of what she carried. The mask was both a shield and a prison. It was her burden, and she wore it alone. The people feared her not for what she had done, but for what she represented. And as the years passed, the pressure to find a suitor who would be willing to face the curse grew stronger. But each time, the suitors came and left. Some had dared to try and peer beneath the mask, but they all recoiled in horror, as though something deep inside them knew the danger. It was as though the curse didn't just affect the person who saw her face, but the very soul of those who dared challenge the legend. In the grand court, the council met with the latest batch of suitors. The nobility had grown impatient. Whispers spread that, without a union, the Viari Empire would fall into ruin. Without a queen to stand beside her, Lysera would never be able to secure the throne. The whispers turned into demands, and soon the council had agreed to send for aid from outside their empire. They had heard of a human envoy, a captain known for his daring and bravery. Perhaps they thought the humans could provide a solution. Captain Elias Ward had spent his career traveling across the galaxy, negotiating peace treaties and handling delicate diplomatic missions. He was a man of action, known for his sharp mind and quick decision-making. The council knew of his reputation and hoped that he could somehow offer a solution. The humans had proven themselves time and time again to be resilient, resourceful, and relentless. Maybe, just maybe, a human would be the one to break the curse. Elias was summoned to the royal palace, and as he stepped onto the planet's surface, he marveled at the beauty that surrounded him. He had heard the stories about the cursed princess, but he did not fully understand the gravity of the situation. As he entered the palace, the air was thick with anticipation. The Viari were a proud species, but Elias felt no fear. He had faced more dangerous situations in his life than some of the most hardened soldiers. He walked into the grand hall, with confidence, ready to meet the princess and hear what was needed of him. The Viari council welcomed him with formal words. Their eyes betrayed their desperation. The captain was not fooled by their polished politeness. He had dealt with enough politics in his life to recognize when someone was desperate. He was here to do a job, and he intended to do it well. Captain Elias Ward, the head of the council. Lord Alcor said, his voice smooth but edged with concern, You have come at a time of great need. The princess, our heir, is bound by a curse, and we fear that without a union, our empire will crumble. No one has dared to bond with her for fear of what might happen. Laius listened intently, absorbing the words. "And you want me to do what, exactly?" he asked, not showing a hint of hesitation. "You want me to bond with her?" The council exchanged uneasy glances. Lord Alcor continued, "It is more than that, Captain. The princess wears a mask, a symbol of the curse. No one has ever seen her face. For those who do are driven mad or bound in ways they cannot escape. We have tried countless suitors, and each has failed. But we are running out of time. Without a union, the Viari bloodline will end." Laius tilted his head, considering the gravity of the situation. He had heard stories of strange traditions and curses in his travels, but this was different. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. "So, you want me to break this curse? Or at least survive it?" "You will be the last hope for our people," Lord Alcor said gravely. "If you cannot succeed, the Viari Empire will fall into chaos." Elias took a moment, weighing his options, knew that if he refused, he would leave the Viari people in the hands of their uncertain fate. But if he agreed, he would face something unlike anything he had ever encountered before, something that could break even his strongest resolve. "I'll do it," he said finally, the words coming without hesitation. "I'll meet the princess and try to bond with her. But understand this, I'm not afraid of legends or curses. I'll face it head on, like I always do." The council seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. They had not expected this human to agree so easily, but his confidence was apparent. They led him to the royal chambers where the princess waited. Lys era sat in the center of the room, her golden mask glinting under the soft light. She was a vision of royalty, yet there was an unmistakable sadness in her posture. Her hands rested gently on her lap, and her eyes, though hidden, held a depth of emotion that was hard to ignore. As Elias entered the room, their gazes met. There was something about her presence that commanded respect, even without seeing her face. It was clear that she was not a typical princess. She had been raised with a burden that no one else could understand. "You must be the human," Lysera said, her voice soft but firm. "The one who will attempt what no one else has." Laius nodded. "I'm the one princess, and I don't fear curses or legends. I'm here because I believe in you, in what you stand for." She studied him for a moment, then spoke again. "No one has ever looked upon me without fear. They've all turned away. Why are you different?" Elias smiled, a calm and unwavering expression. "Because I don't see a curse. I see a person, someone who's been forced to wear a mask their whole life. I understand what it's like to carry a burden. I'll help you, but only if you're willing to face the truth together." The room was silent for a long moment. Lysera's heart fluttered in a way she hadn't expected. Could it really be possible for someone to look at her without fear? Could someone truly accept her, mask and all? She nodded slowly and carefully. "Then let's begin." Elias could feel the weight of the moment as he sat across from Princess Lysera. Her presence was overwhelming, and yet she was so still, so quiet, that it was hard to read her emotions. It had been a long journey to reach this point. He had heard the rumors, the whispers of the cursed princess who wore a mask so no one could see her face. He had heard the stories of those who had tried to break the curse, of the suitors who had failed, of the empire's growing desperation. But now, facing Lysera, he realized just how much more there was to this than the stories. The princess did not speak for a long while. She simply stared at him, her golden mask shimmering in the dim light of the chamber. Her eyes, though hidden, seemed to pierce through him, as if searching for something in him, something that might prove him worthy of what he was about to do. Elias had faced death countless times, but this was different. This wasn't a battle against an enemy or an obstacle he could fight with weapons. This was a test of something far deeper, a test of trust, of courage, and of something even more elusive: understanding. Finally, Lysera spoke, her voice soft but steady. "You don't fear the curse, do you?" Elias leaned back in his chair, never taking his eyes off her. "I've fought in wars, crossed deadly lands, and faced creatures far worse than any curse. But fear? No, I don't fear you. Her gaze did not falter, and for a moment, Elias wondered if she was measuring his words, calculating their meaning. You're different, she said. No one has ever spoken to me like that. Most see me as a monster, someone to be avoided. Others try to gain favor, but all of them. They all look at me like I'm a puzzle to be solved, a mystery to be figured out. Elias could hear the pain in her voice, the deep loneliness that had shaped her life. For a moment, he considered his next words carefully. He was a soldier, a man of action, not a man of comfort or words. But this was different. This was a person, a real person, who had suffered alone for too long. I don't see a monster, Princess, he said, his voice calm and sincere. I see someone who's been forced into a role they didn't choose. I see someone who's had to wear a mask, not just physically, but emotionally. Someone who has been told their whole life that they are cursed, that they are alone. But that's not who you are. You are strong. You are capable. Maybe the world has misunderstood you? For the first time since they had met, Elias saw a flicker in her eyes. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but it was there in acknowledgement of something she had long buried. Perhaps she hadn't fully believed it herself, but in that moment, she allowed herself to wonder. Could it really be possible for someone to see her as she was, beyond the mask, beyond the curse? I was born into this role, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's all I've known. I was raised to believe that I was different, that I was somehow ... cursed. And every suitor, every person who came to try and bond with me, they all feared me. They couldn't look past the mask. They couldn't accept that the curse was only a part of me, not all of me. Elias didn't know what to say at first. How could anyone truly understand the weight of what she carried? He couldn't imagine growing up in a world where everyone feared you, where every relationship was built on the assumption of your inevitable failure. The thought of it made his chest tighten. I'm not like the others, he finally said. I've seen fear too. I've also seen what it means to face it, to keep moving forward even when everything tells you to turn back. I've faced danger, but not because I wanted to die. I faced it because there's something worth living for. And I think he hesitated for a moment, feeling the enormity of his next words. I think there's something worth finding here with you. Lysera did not respond immediately. She sat still, her mask reflecting the soft glow of the room. Elias couldn't read her, couldn't know for sure what she was thinking, but he could sense the shift in the air. It was subtle, like the calm. Before a storm, but it was there. After what seemed like an eternity, Lysera slowly rose from her seat, turning her back to him as she walked toward the window. I have lived my life in shadows, she said softly. The mask is not just a symbol. It is my shield, my protection. If I remove it, if I show myself ... I fear what will happen. I fear what you will see. Elias stood up and approached her slowly, not wanting to break the fragile moment between them. You've carried that burden for so long, he said, his voice gentle but firm. But the world doesn't have to see you the way you've been told to be seen. If you want to break the curse, you have to start by letting go of the fear. Let me see you, not the mask, not the legend, just you. She turned to face him, her back still straight and her hands gripping the edge of the window ledge. There was hesitation in her posture, a wariness in her eyes. She had been told her entire life that this moment would destroy her. No one could handle what lay beneath the mask. And yet here he was, standing before her, asking for nothing more than the chance to see her for who she truly was. I don't know if I can, she whispered. You don't have to decide right away, Elias replied. I'm not here to pressure you. But if you want to try, if you want to face this together, I'll be here. I won't turn away. Not from you. For a long moment, there was silence between them. Elias could feel the weight of her decision pressing down on him. He knew that this moment would be the turning point, the moment where everything changed. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain. This was no longer just about a political alliance or a cursed princess. It was about to people two souls facing something greater than themselves. Lysera finally turned back to him, her expression unreadable beneath the mask. I've never been able to trust anyone enough to show them who I really am, she said, "but I think I might trust you." Alyssa's heart beat a little faster, but he didn't show it. He simply nodded, his expression calm but determined. "That's all I ask." And so they sat together in the quiet of the room, neither one speaking, both of them caught in the moment of something new. It was a strange kind of intimacy, the kind that didn't rely on physical closeness, but instead on an unspoken understanding. That they were both standing on the edge of something vast, something unknown, something that would change everything. For the first time in her life, Lysera felt something stir inside her, a flicker of hope, of possibility. It was a fragile feeling, one that she wasn't sure she could trust. But for the first time, she didn't want to push it away. She wanted to see where it might lead. She wanted to see what would happen if she let someone in. If she let someone see her, truly see her. And in that moment, Elias knew that no matter what happened next, he had already broken through the walls she had built around herself. The curse might still linger in the shadows, but it was no longer the only thing that defined her. They were no longer just two strangers from different worlds. They were two people, standing at the edge of something powerful and new. The journey had only just begun. Elias stood by the window, watching the distant stars twinkle in the night sky. He could hear the soft sounds of the palace around him, the whispers of courtiers and servants, and the distant hum of life continuing on as usual. Yet, in this moment, the world outside felt far away. His focus was entirely on the princess, on the woman who sat across the room, still hidden behind the mask that had defined her life. Lysera had not yet made the decision to reveal herself fully. She had spent the last few days thinking, wrestling with the weight of everything Elias had said. She had asked herself questions she had never allowed herself to ask before. Could she trust him? Was it possible that someone, especially someone from outside her world, could truly understand her? It had been strange to be seen for the first time in so long, to speak to someone who didn't recoil or fear her. Elias had not seen her as a curse. He had seen her as a person, a woman trapped in a role she had never chosen. It was a thought that both terrified and comforted her. Could she really let him in? Could she truly face the world without the mask? The decision weighed heavily on her heart, and she could feel it pressing against her chest. She had spent her whole life hiding, and now she was being asked to break free, to do something she had never dared. Princess Elisa's voice interrupted her thoughts, pulling her back into the present. She looked up at him, and for a moment their eyes met. Even with the mask between them, there was something in his gaze, something steady, something unwavering that made her feel like she was not alone. "You've been quiet," Elias said, softly, taking a step closer. "But you don't have to do this if you're not ready. I won't rush you. But if you are ready, I'm here." Lysera's fingers brushed against the edge of her mask. It felt like the only thing holding her together, the only thing keeping her safe. But she also knew that it was the very thing that kept her locked in isolation, the very thing that kept her from knowing what it meant to truly be seen. She had lived her life behind this barrier, but perhaps, just perhaps, she could live without it. "I don't know if I can," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've never been able to let anyone see me, not truly," Elias nodded, his expression soft but understanding. "I know it's not easy, but I'm not asking you to do it alone." Lysera stood slowly, feeling the weight of the mask pull at her shoulders. She had never thought of herself as weak, but in that moment, it felt as if the mask was all that held her together. Without it, who would she be? What would she become? She took a deep breath and turned toward the mirror. She hadn't looked. At her reflection in years, she hadn't dared. The face she would see beneath the mask was not one that anyone had ever witnessed. There had been too much pain, too much fear in her life to face it. Elias moved to stand beside her, watching as she slowly reached up and, with a trembling hand, removed the golden mask. The cool air of the room brushed against her skin, and for the first time in years, she felt the world pressing against her face. The vulnerability was overwhelming, and for a moment, she couldn't bring herself to look at Elias. She could feel his presence beside her, but his eyes were still hidden from her. "It's okay," he said gently, his voice warm and patient. "Take your time. I'm right here." Lysera took another deep breath, steadying herself. She turned her gaze too, the mirror, her heart pounding in her chest. She saw the face she had hidden for so long, delicate features, soft jawline, and eyes that carried the weight of all the years of loneliness. But there was also something else there, something she hadn't seen before, strength, a quiet strength, that had been forged in the fire of isolation. As she gazed at her reflection, she felt something shift inside her. The mask had always been a shield, but it had also been a prison. She had thought that removing it would expose her to the world, but now she realized that it was only by taking it off that she could truly see herself. She could finally be free. When she turned to face Elias, she was surprised to find that he was not looking at her with fear or shock. His eyes were steady, calm, and full of something else, something she had never seen in another person's eyes before: acceptance. "Thank you," she whispered, barely able to speak the words. "Thank you for not turning away." Elias smiled, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not here to judge you, Lysera. I'm here because I believe in you. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be anyone but yourself." The words were simple, but they cut through the wall she had built around her heart. For the first time, she felt like she could breathe. For the first time, she felt like someone saw her not as a princess, not as a cursed being, but as a person. She felt human again. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They simply stood together in the quiet of the room, the air between them thick with emotion. Lysera's heart raced, but there was a new sense of calm that began to settle over her. She had done it. She had faced the fear that had ruled her life for so long. She had come out stronger. "You're not what I expected," she said after a while, her voice soft but clear. Elias raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what did you expect?" "Don't!" "No," she said, almost laughing at herself. "Or maybe someone who would run away, or someone who would judge me for what I am." "But you ... you're different." Elias chuckled, but there was a warmth to it. "I told you, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you, if you'll let me." Lysera looked at him, feeling something stir in her chest. It was not love, not yet. But it was something. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. The beginning of trust. "Will you stay?" she asked softly. "Will you stay and help me?" Elias didn't hesitate. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I'll stay, and I'll help you. Whatever you need." It's a simple promise. It was more than just words. It was a vow, a commitment. And in that moment, Lysera realized that Elias was not like the others. He was not here for power or glory. He was here because he saw something in her that no one else had ever seen. He saw her for who she truly was, and that made all the difference in the days that followed. Lysera and Elias worked together, learning more about each other with each passing moment. The connection between them deepened as they spent time talking, learning about their worlds, their struggles, and their hopes. The princess, who had once been isolated and alone, now found herself growing closer to the one person who had never feared her, but the path ahead was still uncertain. The curse that had hung over her life was far from broken, and the pressure from the council and the Vieri people remained. The nobles watched closely, waiting for the moment when the bond between Elias and Lysera would falter. They were waiting for them to fail, but Elias wasn't going anywhere, and neither was Lysera. Together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. And as the days passed, the weight of the curse began to feel a little less heavy. It was still there, lurking in the shadows, but with Elias at her side, Lysera began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could change her fate, and with it, the fate of the Vieri people. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, Lysera didn't feel afraid. She had someone who saw her, someone who understood her, and that made all the difference. The days passed quietly in the royal palace, but beneath the calm surface, a storm was brewing. Lysera had begun to feel the weight of her position once again. The Vieri court, which had once been filled with whispers of her curse, now hummed. With a different kind of tension, the nobles, who had once dismissed her as a lost cause, were beginning to take notice. They saw the connection between her and Elias, and with it came a growing fear. The news of their bond had spread quickly, and not all of it was positive. While some saw it as a sign of hope, a chance for the princess to break free of her curse, others saw it as a threat. The Veyari Empire was built on tradition, and the idea of an outsider, a human, becoming a part of the royal bloodline was more than some could tolerate. There were those who believed that no one, no matter how strong, could be allowed to share the throne with the princess. They saw Elias as a danger to their power, and they would stop at nothing to ensure that the royal bloodline stayed pure. Lysera felt the pressure of these factions closing in on her. It wasn't just the nobles who were watching her now. It was the entire empire. People of Veyr were curious, fearful, and hopeful all at once. They wanted to see if the curse would break or if it would consume her. No matter what, they expected her to make a choice, either accept the human at her side or cast him aside. There was no middle ground. As for Elias, he had not been blinded by the promise of power or the allure of the throne. He had come to Veyr out of duty, but somewhere along the way, it had become more than just that. It had become about Lysera, about the woman who had hidden herself behind a mask for so long. She had shown him a side of herself that no one else had seen. She had shown him her vulnerability, her strength, and her hope. It was something he couldn't turn away from, no matter the cost, but the cost was growing higher with each passing day. The council had begun to put pressure on Lysera to make a decision. They demanded that she either remove Elias from her life or agree to a public bond that would solidify his place by her side. They were afraid of the consequences if she chose the latter. They were afraid of losing control, of losing everything they had fought for. Lysera sat in her chambers late one evening, her fingers lightly touching the mask that still lay on her vanity. She had not put it back on, but the weight of it was still there, pressing on her mind. She had come so far, but there were moments when she still felt the pull of her past. The pull of the fear and isolation that had defined her for so long. Could she truly let go of that? Could she truly allow herself to be seen? The door to her chambers opened quietly, and Elias stepped inside. He had been with her through it all, and she had come to rely on his steady presence. He was the one person who had never treated her like a burden, who had never feared what lay beneath the mask. And in that, he had become more than just a companion. He had become her anchor. Lysera, he asked gently, his voice low. Shh. Are you all right? She turned to him, her gaze meeting his. For a moment, there was nothing but silence between them. She had never been able to show anyone the full depth of her thoughts before. She had always kept her worries locked away, buried beneath the mask. But with Elias, it was different. She didn't have to hide. She didn't have to pretend. I don't know what to do, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The council is demanding answers. The people are watching, and I don't know if I can live up to their expectations. Elias stepped forward, his expression soft but determined. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. The council doesn't get to dictate your life, Lysera. You're the one in control now. I don't feel like I am, she confessed, her eyes dropping to the floor. The weight of the throne is still on my shoulders. I'm still bound by the rules, the expectations. I've spent so long hiding behind the mask, and now that it's gone, I feel exposed. I feel vulnerable. Elias reached out, gently cupping her chin and lifting her face to meet his gaze. Being vulnerable doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. You're not alone. You've got me, and I'm not going anywhere. The words settled in her chest like a comforting weight, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to believe them. The fear that had gripped her heart loosened just a little. Elias was right. She didn't have to face this alone. She'd already taken the first step by removing the mask. Now she had to take the next step. She had to trust herself and trust. I'm not afraid of the throne, Lysera said, her voice gaining strength. I'm not afraid of the responsibility. I'm afraid of what happens if I fail. You won't fail, Elias said, his voice filled with conviction. You're not alone in this. We're in this together. She looked up at him, her heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something deeper. She wasn't sure if it was love, but it was something real, something that had begun to grow between them, something that had started with trust and respect and was blossoming into something more. It was a feeling that made her believe in the possibility. of a future she had never imagined, but the council would not be so easily convinced. The next day, the members of the Viari court gathered in the grand hall, their faces tense and serious. Lysera entered the room, her posture straight, her expression calm. She had made a decision, and now she would face the consequences of it. "Princess." "Lysera," Lord Alcor said, his voice measured, but firm. "Oh, you have brought this outsider into our midst. And now we must ask, what is your intention? Will you bond with this human and risk the future of the royal bloodline? Him aside and return to the traditions that have kept our empire strong?" Lysera stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times, but now that it was here, it felt different. The words she spoke next were not just a decision for herself, they were a declaration to the entire empire. "I will bond with Elias," she said, her voice steady and strong. "I will not let fear or tradition dictate my life. I will choose my own path, and if that path leads me to the throne beside him, then so be it." The room fell silent. The nobles exchanged glances, some nodding in approval, others looking uneasy. Lysera could feel the weight of their gazes on her, but she stood firm. She had made her choice. There was no turning back now. Elias stood beside her, his presence a silent but unwavering support. He did not speak, but his hand brushed against hers, a quiet reassurance that he was with her, no matter what. Lord Alcor stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Very well, Princess," he said, his voice tight. "But know this, your decision will have consequences. There are those who will not accept this union. There will be those who will try to tear it apart." Lysera met his gaze, unflinching. "I understand the risks, but this is my choice, and I will face whatever comes with it." As the council session ended, the weight of her decision settled over her. She had chosen Elias, and with that choice came not just the potential for her future, but the future of her people. She had chosen to break free from the chains of tradition, to embrace a future that was uncertain but filled with possibility. Elias stood beside her as they left the council chambers, his presence a steady reminder that she was not alone in this. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, and together they would rewrite the story of the Viari royal line. The empire may not have been ready for the change, but Lysera was. And with Elias by her side, she felt stronger than ever. The following days were filled with uncertainty and tension. Lysera had made her choice, and she had declared it openly before the Viari court. But words were easy. Actions, however, were much harder. The council had accepted her decision, but the nobles, the very heart of Viari's power, were not so easily convinced. They had watched her, studied her, and now they were waiting for her to prove that her choice was more than a passing impulse. Despite their outward acceptance, the whispers had only grown louder. Some of the nobles secretly plotted against her, certain that Elias's influence would bring ruin to the Viari Empire. Others, more loyal to tradition, feared that the throne would never be the same if she chose a human over a VR partner. Lysera could feel their eyes on her as she walked through the grand halls of the palace, her steps measured and deliberate. She no longer felt the weight of the mask she had once worn. It had been removed and the world had seen her face. But the weight of the Empire's expectations was something else entirely, was suffocating, pressing in from all sides. Elias had noticed the change in her. She had always been strong, but now there was a weariness in her that he couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the council or the nobles. It was the burden of leading a people who were not yet ready for change, a people who had been steeped in tradition for centuries. But Elias knew that no matter what happened, he would be by her side. They had crossed a line together, and there was no going back. "Lysera," Elias said one evening, as they stood together on the balcony overlooking the palace gardens. "How are you holding up?" She didn't answer at first. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, her expression distant. The soft breeze brushed against her face, but it didn't seem to ease the tension she carried. She had always been alone in this, but now, with Elias beside her, she felt a different kind of isolation. She was no longer hiding behind a mask. but she still felt like she didn't belong. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias turned to her, his gaze full of concern. "You don't have to do it alone. You have me, and you have the strength that's always been inside you. You've already made the hardest choice. The rest will come in time." She glanced at him, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. "But what if they don't accept us? What if they try to tear us apart?" "We'll face that together," Elias replied firmly. "If they want to fight us, we'll fight back. But we won't do it alone." Lysera took a deep breath, the words giving her some comfort, but they didn't completely erase the fear that lingered. The palace, the council, the nobles, they were all watching. The pressure to make the right decision weighed heavily on her. No matter how much she wanted to ignore it, it was always there, lurking in the background. The next day, as Lysera entered the grand hall for another council meeting, the tension was palpable. The nobles were already gathered, their expressions serious, some even hostile. As soon as she entered, their eyes turned toward her, and for a moment she felt like she was standing alone in the midst of a storm. Lord Alcor, the head of the council, rose from his seat. His expression was as hard as stone, his eyes narrowed. "Princess Lysera," he began, his voice low but clear. "We have heard your decision, and we respect your right to choose. But you must understand the consequences of this choice. The Vaeri bloodline is sacred. It cannot be tainted by an outsider." Lysera stood tall, her posture unwavering. She had been prepared for this moment, but that didn't make it any easier. "I understand the gravity of my decision, Lord Alcor, but I will not let fear or tradition define my future. Elias is not an outsider. He is someone who has shown me a loyalty that no Vaeri suitor has ever shown. He is someone who sees me for who I am, not for the mask I once wore." There was a murmur of disapproval among the nobles, but Lysera ignored it. She had made her choice, and now she would stand by it. She had no intention of letting anyone tear her down or make her second-guess herself. Lord Alcor's gaze softened slightly, but it was clear that he was not ready to accept this new reality. "We cannot allow you to make such a decision without understanding its consequences. You will risk the unity of the Vaeri people. You will risk everything that has been built over centuries." "Then perhaps it is time for something new," Lysera replied, her voice steady. "The old ways have held us back for too long. It is time for change." There was silence in the room. The nobles seemed stunned by her boldness. Had once been filled with tension and fear, now felt heavy with the weight of her words. Lysera knew that this was a turning point. She could feel the eyes of the court upon her, waiting for her to falter, waiting for her to show weakness. But she didn't. She stood firm, the weight of her decision lifting her in a way she had never expected. After a long pause, Lord Alcor spoke again, his voice quieter this time. "You are brave, Princess. I will give you that. But bravery alone will not save this empire. The people are restless. They want a ruler who will keep them safe, who will protect them from the chaos that is sure to follow." "And I will be that ruler," Lysera replied without hesitation. "But not if I live in fear of what others think, not if I allow the past to control me." Lias, who had been standing quietly beside her, stepped forward. "The people of Vaer deserve a ruler who will lead them with strength and courage. And if they cannot see that, then perhaps they are the ones who need to change, not the princess." Lord Alcor's eyes flicked toward Elias, and for a moment the two men locked gazes. There was a brief tension between them, a clash of wills. But in the end, it was Lysera's decision that mattered. "I will not be afraid of the future," Lysera said, her voice unwavering. "And I will not let anyone take away the future that I have chosen." The nobles were quiet, and for a long moment no one spoke. It was clear that the council had not expected such defiance. Lysera could feel the shift in the air, the tension loosening just slightly. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she had made it clear where she stood. As the meeting ended, the nobles filed out of the room one by one, their faces still marked by uncertainty. Lysera felt a sense of relief. Even in the midst of the storm, she had taken a stand, and now there was no turning back. Elias stayed by her side, offering silent support. He didn't need to say anything. His presence was enough. They walked together through the halls of the palace, their steps echoing in the quiet. "You did it," Elias said, his voice soft but full of pride. "I had to," Lysera replied, her voice tired but strong. "I couldn't let them control me anymore." "They won't. Not if you stay true to yourself," Elias said. "And I'll be with you every step of the way." Lysera smiled, a small but genuine smile.
Oh.
She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it. She had made her choice. She had chosen herself. And with Elias by her side, she felt like there was nothing she couldn't overcome as they walked together into the future. Lysera knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, she was no longer afraid. She had chosen to live without fear, and that choice would define everything that came after.